my meeting is going to be recorded. Thank you, Chelsea. Appreciate that. For those of you who missed my introduction, if you just came into the meeting, I'm Jeannie Kitchens with Southern Illinois University Center for Workforce Development, and we're part of the Illinois Shared Learning Environment Project team. We've got a couple of project team members who have joined the meeting, and Chelsea Jones with our office is always on is also on the webinar. And Chelsea, if you can check with Melanie and Dina possibly and see if anybody wants to speak while we're doing the webinar, because I welcome the team members to talk about the project, so you don't just have to hear it from me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cover up this little notepad up here. For those of you who participated in prior meetings concerning the Illinois Shared Learning Environment, you already have a little bit of background, but I'm going to guess that some of you on this webinar today are new to the conversation about the Illinois Shared Learning Environment. So there's a lot of background information to share, and our time is limited this afternoon. So I just wanted to focus this webinar on where we are now in the project. And give you a little tiny bit of background. And as we go through this, I welcome all of you to put information into, or questions or comments into the chat pod, because we're going to be happy to answer them as we go along. I'll be happy to answer them, and then the other IELTS partners who are on the meeting could probably type in the chat as well and answer your questions. So feel free to ask questions. And then if you feel like you need a deeper dive into information, you could let me know, because we could always do another webinar that's maybe more detailed as well. So what I want to just let you know is there is planning information available. And for those of you who aren't aware, on the Illinois Pathways website, and you see the web page here, some of the published information we have is already there. And so you're welcome to look at any of that information, and also follow us on our Facebook page. Again, for those of you new to the Illinois Shared Learning Environment conversation, we want to make sure that you know what the mission is of IEL. And so IEL's mission is to drive academic achievement and career success for lifelong learners. We really want to stress that lifelong learners in Illinois by enabling personalized learning through open and accessible technologies. And I'd like to point out the bullets below the mission that are our tenets, our objectives. And I want to point out that this isn't just for academic education, because I know I see plenty of you in the meeting, and because your STEM learning exchanges are concerned about the career development aspects of it and the career pathway aspect as well. So we want to bring both together and not just focus on one or the other. How can IEL advance personalized learning? In that first slide, I showed you some of the background information that is available online right now. And one of the infographic, this is an excerpt of that infographic. You can take a look at that infographic and see the bigger picture. But what we want to talk about today are the apps that will be part of the initial development of the Illinois Shared Learning Environment that will help advance personalized learning. And so some of these things may be new concepts or new technologies for you, and that's perfectly understandable. We're going to keep having these conversations so you can keep learning about them. One of the specific kinds of applications that we'll be looking at are learning maps. And with the learning maps, a lot of resource sharing. And I want to emphasize quality resource sharing and not reinventing the wheel. We already know there's a lot of resources out there. But there's also a lot of emphasis right now, nationally and globally, on open quality resources, and we need those resources to be easily found, easy to share, and we want to make those available through the Illinois Shared Learning Environment, including things like assessments. And the other part of it is collaboration. All of us need to collaborate and work together to learn to use the new technologies with the goal of improving education and improving the conversations among ourselves as well. The Illinois Shared Learning Environment is getting ready to launch an informational website. This is a sneak peek. Actually, this is a screenshot of the actual site. We have a partner meeting tomorrow, and I'll be ready to show all the partners the site. It will be informational. This is where you'll be able to go to get background information, to read and contribute to the blog, and to subscribe to news so you can stay in the information loop, as well as things like review the calendar, participate with the calendar, participate with the social media as well, see videos, and this is where we'll also, if we have apps ready to pilot ahead of the ISLE portal, where they'll be made available as well. So today our agenda is going to focus on where we are now in the process with ISLE. So we'll talk about the big picture, the planned components. We'll do a review of the applications or apps that have been selected and funded through ISLE for initial free use. And we'll talk about the partnership with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, what access users will have to those applications, and we're just going to do an overview of one of the apps that we're all working on now that are about open education resources. I'm going to provide an overview of that as well. And again, if as I'm going along, if you have questions, please feel free to go ahead and type them in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer your questions as we go along. So the big picture and timeline, so right now we are working with Bloomington School District 87 here in Illinois. That school district is also an In Bloom pilot. In Bloom was formerly the Shared Learning Collaborative, and they are a national partner that Illinois is working with. We're working side by side with them on the technologies that we're developing initially for ISLE. If you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to visit the In Bloom website, and again, you'll be able to follow us on our new website. For those of you who aren't familiar, you probably would have a lot of questions about that, but we're not going to cover that background information today. We're going to integrate data from the 35 Race to the Top school districts. Now, this work is actually underway right now as well. Our partners who are handling those aspects of the project are working with the Race to the Top districts to store their data, and so to make it more useful for the applications in a secure environment. And we'll also be working on an initial rollout of what we call the ISLE and In Bloom technologies to the 35 Race to the Top districts in January of 2014, with implementation coming the next fall. The applications to support the Common Core implementation and the Illinois Pathways Initiative, which is the STEM learning exchanges, also occurs during the 2013, 2014 school year. Then the work with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission will provide what we call the learner-facing applications for the students that will be available during the 2014-15 school year and beyond. So as we talk about the applications that the ISLE is going to fund initially that will be available at no cost, we're going to break them down into four kind of large areas here. The first one is infrastructure. And so this is all the hardware and software, and our partners, Illini Cloud and NCSA, the National Center for Supercomputing Applications, are working together on that. They're also working on the data integration, and so we're talking about the student data that schools already have, and they may have that data in several applications, and we're looking at ways to better streamline that in very secure ways to improve how the applications that the schools are using now works for them in the future. This will also integrate with the In Bloom data as well. This is underway right now. The user interface. So you saw that we're going to be releasing an informational website, and I want to stress informational because ISLE will actually be a portal that will provide single sign-on to integrate many applications and data with dashboards. And NCSA is taking the lead on that as well. So while we're working on building the portal and creating these applications, bringing the applications in, we'll be using the ISLE's website as your informational source. And then we have apps or applications. And right now we're focusing on pre-K to 12 for educators, and also I had mentioned the learner apps. So when I'm talking about the learner apps, I'm talking about the student perspective as well being covered with those. And so Northern Illinois University, Illinois Interactive Report Card Group is working on that, as well as SIU Center for Workforce Development. And so those are just the 4 large areas of the components being worked on right now as we're in the development stage of the process here. And Bruce has a question here, so every now and then I'm going to pause and just kind of look at the chat and see if people have questions, because we want to go ahead and get them answered. And Bruce is asking, what specific data are you putting in from the school districts? And so the schools are putting in a variety of classroom level data, Bruce, that they already use for a wide variety of applications. But they're going to streamline that effort. I don't have anything handy with like specifics of all the fields, but it is student level, kind of what we call classroom level data, if that helps. And if it doesn't, go ahead and ask another question, and we'll see if others on the IL team in the meeting can chime in, and I will get back to you with additional information if that wasn't sufficient. And then there's another question, can school districts who are not Race to the Top participants use the portal? Well, it's a really good question. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. We do want to say with the IL team, we like to say that we're going to, walk before we run and run before we fly and fly before we soar. And so we're going to begin by kind of a phased approach, rolling it out very deliberately so we have time to test things and make sure they work before we go too broadly. And so we're starting off with Bloomington School District and the Race to the Top school districts initially. However, you'll see once I move forward with this PowerPoint that we're looking at single sign-on to multiple apps for different types of users. And keeping in mind that we are beginning the development of all these now. These things are not available now. We are under development. So we are looking at single sign-on for the general public. And remember, our mission statement talked about being open and accessible. So this is really important, that we're going to not close the system down and require everyone to be, for example, with the school district, but allow open access to some of the basic information that does not require customization. And then we'll have what we call our IL basic users. And these are users who need customized access to applications through IL to, for example, use learning maps that I mentioned earlier, or participate in collaboration communities. They'll have access to these applications. However, these basic users will not have access to apps that require that student level data that I was just talking about that we know has to be protected. And then we'll have what we call the IELTS Plus. And just keep in mind, these are just very kind of broad buckets for our conversation today, that these groups would have the full access to the IELTS functionality, and to really utilize that, that would include that student data as well. So the initial audience will be the Race to the Top school districts, but I would also say that the initial audience is our STEM learning exchanges. However, the Race to the Top school districts are the users of the information that you aggregate or make available through your exchanges. And let me just take a look here and see what Bruce is asking. I'm not sure what classroom level data is. Is it Grace? So classroom level data would be individual students and the information about those students that could range from homework assignments, grades, roster, basically the day-to-day kind of information that schools use to not only know if a student is in school, but what assistance they need on a daily basis, and grades and those sorts of things as well. So we'll talk some more about those apps, and maybe that question will be better answered. And so apps funded with the IEL budget, okay? And so this is what we're working on, based on the budget, based on feedback from the focus groups and the online surveys, and from the STEM Learning Exchange lead entities also provided feedback and surveys so we can find some common threads and themes about what people needed. So I'm going to get into each of the items on this list, so I'm not going to read the list. And you'll notice that we have a timeline, and we're looking at all these things really being in full deployment in 2014, probably mid-2014. So we have a very aggressive timeline here that we are all literally working on now, and that is our hope to meet that timeline. So that gives you a good idea that it's not way, way off in the future. You know, there could be circumstances where the timeline does adjust, but it is not way off into the future. So what I want to do now is just kind of walk through the suite of applications that we're focusing on and that you saw on that prior slide, and just provide a little description of each one. And again, as I describe these, if you would like clarification, please feel free to go ahead and ask for that clarification. So at the top of the list, we have our dashboard suite. And I don't want to say that any of these are in any priority, because all these applications really in the end work together. If you imagine through the portal, you're going to use a dashboard suite, and that would be multifunctional for depending on your role with, say, a school. So you might be a teacher, you might be a content specialist, you might be an administrator, and each will have a variety of instructional resources. And here's your student kind of data that we were talking about earlier, the profiles, assessment rosters, reports, forms for attendance, all the kinds of things that you need to see through the dashboard, including response to intervention and special education. So that's our dashboard suite, which requires the student data. And intervention tracking is a very specific aspect of that dashboard suite, but something that's a very specific kind of application or use case, we call it, that's being worked on for the Bloomington School District initially, and of course to the benefit of all the Race to the Top school districts and beyond. But this is to help teachers to recognize what's impactful to student achievement and outcomes. And so intervention may be for a special education student, but really intervention tracking can be for any student who needs to additional guidance or support to keep forging ahead and learning and staying on track. And so that is in progress right now. The dashboard suite and the intervention tracking are both, Northern Illinois University is involved with both of these right now. So you'll be hearing more about that in the future. And then learning maps. For those of you who are not familiar with our prior webinars or meetings, when I talk about a learning map, I like to talk it in compare it to Google Maps, because probably everyone on the webinar uses Google Maps. And when you use the Google map, you always have a beginning point and an end point, but you know you might want to take the highway, or you might want to take the scenic route, you might want to detour, you might want to change your mind and not go to your destination, so you might want to reroute, and you also might want to drill down to the street level, and you also might want to change your view from the map view to the detail list view. So imagine that same kind of concept for learning, where you could literally have a learning map that shows the continuum of learning across the career pathways, for example. So we might have a micro map and a macro map, and we also talk about them as unlit and lit maps. And so what we mean by that is that an unlit map would be a visualization of a learning progression. Behind that learning progression would be learning standards, and connected to those learning standards would be that quality tagged content that you need so that for the student to use to learn those standards. So that would be an unlit learning map. And then a lit learning map brings in our student data. And so now if we have a lit learning map, much like our Google Maps, we can chart out some paths and learning progressions, and then we can drill down into those learning progressions to see our resources, to see our student data, to get a good idea of what works and what doesn't work for each individual student for differentiation. So you can see that the plan is to have an English language arts, math, science, and STEM cluster areas as an initial point for developing these learning maps. So going on down the list, and again, if there was anything on that first slide you want to ask about, please feel free to go ahead and type it in the chat. So the additional applications here include assessment, authoring, and delivery. Now this tool will be through a request for proposals, and what it will allow teachers to create, administer, deliver, and score assessments and integrate it into the portal with the dashboards and the learning maps that I just mentioned as well that are aligned to the standards. Now, all of you on the webinar may or may not be familiar with the Common Core standards, but those are the standards that Illinois is using for teaching K-12, and the upcoming Next Generation Science standards as well will be used. But we also need to begin looking at other learning standards for the career pathways as well. We need to start bringing those in as well. And then content tagging and discovery. And so if when we're creating our learning maps and we're authoring our assessments, and we want to be able to keep our assessments in Illinois and possibly even share them, then we have to have behind that a kind of process where we're creating and encouraging quality open educational resources and have tools for creating and sharing them. And so that is something we're working on as well, and we're working directly with Bloom, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, and I'm going to show you a couple of samples of screenshots of those tools as well. Content repository. So we have specific, again, use cases where STEM learning exchanges, school districts, for example, have created some kind of a digital object or resource, say a video or a assessment, for example, and you don't have a means to put it online. You'll be able to upload that into the content repository. It will be discoverable through the content tagging. It could have been that you authored an assessment and went into the content repository, and all of these tying into the learning map through that portal integration. We'll also be bringing in the collaboration tools. It's going to be extremely critical that as these new technologies are used and adopted and learned, that all of us are communicating very closely and working together to advance education in Illinois. We also have our career exploration and preparation tools, and there are so many aspects, or what I call the functions, of career exploration and preparation. We did not include all of them in here, but imagine the career exploration, beginning literally with exploring and then moving on to preparing, learning, training, and remember our mission, the lifelong learning. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. Now, I'm sure you've all noticed that my chart has the 3 columns on the right, and I didn't want to read all of that off to you, but you'll notice, I'm sure you've noticed my little X's indicate who the tools are for, and the STM being the STEM Learning Exchanges, so you could see how the idea is that this could help your efforts as well working with the school districts. I'm just going to take a moment. I see some things that have been going on in the chat, and I want to see if there are some new questions here that I need to answer, so just give me a moment to take a look before I get too far ahead here. And I see a question here. How do you see this being integrated with the learning exchanges that are being exchanged? So with the learning exchanges, the idea here is that there some of these applications that you're seeing were selected based on feedback from the Race to the Top school districts, from all of our focus groups, our online surveys, and our STEM surveys, with the lead entities of the learning exchanges indicating the kinds of tools that they needed initially that would be helpful. And so what we're trying to do is create this kind of initial application suite with our budget that can be extended. So I also want to say that this is not meant to be all-encompassing in the beginning of the end, that what we want to have is a very good beginning and a very well-rounded set of applications that can be expanded as well. But these are what are within our budget. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, Michelle. If I didn't, let me know. And who will develop the assessments that will be tied to the Common Core? Marianne made a really good question. We're working right now on the request for proposals for a group to bring in an application, and I believe that the idea is those applications are already come with some assessments that have already been validated, but also that others can in fact create their own assessments and validate them and opt to share them or just use them. And let's see, a couple other questions coming in, and let's see, manufacturing and other business sectors are using NCRC for assessing entry-level candidates. Is the attorneys out to determine funding for the complete set of tests? Okay, good. Yeah, so that could be an example of something available through the Illinois Shared Learning Environment. Again, we're focusing on a well-rounded set of applications that are within the budget constraints. So, and then Bruce, is there a place to put course curriculum even as specific as lesson plans? Yes, there is. When I was talking about the content discovery tools, we're not creating a course builder with that, but we are providing a means to author non-digital content that can include curriculum. So as an example, with the Bloomington School District, they have a very specific use case that we're working on, but they have two. And one is a 5th grade curriculum and all of the supporting aspects of that. So its curriculum is, modules, units, lessons, activities, and then the supporting resources. And so those can be tagged and put online if they need to be put online, and then made searchable through the tagging tools, which then tie into all of the other apps that we were just talking about. I'm going to go on to this next slide, and then I'll take another look in just a second and see what other questions have come in. So the other applications include the STEM Resource Locator and Scheduler, and so this will be a scheduler that will consider things that range from the Speakers Bureau need to tangible equipment, to locations that people just need to go to maybe talk to an expert or communicate with an expert, something like that. I'm sure you, and this would be the kind of tool where each of the learning exchanges would have their direct access, and it could be set up. So for example, manufacturing wants to see all the manufacturing stuff, and IT wants to see all the IT stuff. So it'll be configurable that way. So it is an asset to all of the STEM learning exchanges. And then we also have a Pathways News and Update Calendar. So this is an app, a standalone app widget that we'll put in the portal. We'll have it on the Initial IL website, I hope, and it could be in other places as well, where you can communicate through the partnership to the entire state the range of things that are going on that people need to connect to and get on their calendars. I want to note here that the career exploration and preparation, that we're very happy and proud to be working with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission partnership. We'll be looking specifically at the What's Next Illinois application and setting that up to work within the portal. So we're very excited about that. And again, think of career exploration as the many functions across the continuum. I'm going to go ahead and click the next slide. And I'm going to circle back to the chat and see, because I think some new questions have come in. Is that determined or undermined in the manufacturing comment? Manufacturing comment. Let's see, manufacturing and other business. Not sure. Sharon, I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I want to answer your question. Help clarify that for me. If someone else can help, feel free to chime in as well. And isn't that, oh, Levon, undermine in Ron's comment as opposed to determine. Oh, okay, determine. That means very different things. Please clarify. Okay. Oh, undermine funding. Oh, okay. Okay, sorry, I didn't realize. I'm not sure what the attorneys are doing. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the ISAC partnership. The ISAC partnership will include the post-secondary career exploration, financial aid planning, resume builder, personalized learning plan, including to enable adult mentors to come in, to provide both horizontal and vertical movement of students from school to school or district to district or high school to college, to support life-wide learning, and it will be undergo ongoing updates as part of a continuous process as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun to work with. The ISAC partnership will also explore potential inclusion of learner-facing lit learning maps. So remember the chart where I had those columns, and it showed learner and STEM and educator, and so this is what we're talking about is the learner access to lit learning maps. And so that would help them carve out their own paths and understand where they are as well as their teacher and parent. Work-based learning opportunity request and approval will be a part of those conversations that we want to keep having and seeing what we can do in the near future. Student and adult project-based learning collaboration, mentoring, and digital badge technologies. Okay. All right. And I see there's been some more commenting coming in here, and I see that you can have continue your conversation about that. I'm not attuned to what's going on with that. So, so now that we've kind of gone through all of those applications and you have the big picture of exactly what's going on now with ISLE and the idea that all of these applications are going to work together within that portal environment to create the beginning. And so we're not saying that we're limiting the future. We're going to have a start to the future. And so user access to apps, remember earlier we talked about the 3 types of accounts, the general public, the basic, and the what I call the plus for members, and that would be the race to the top school districts initially. And I'm not saying that it's limited forever to the race to the top school districts, but remember, we need to test these things that are all new. The whole idea here is going to be new to everyone using it. We need to make sure that we're working with our Bloomington School District and the race to the top school districts before it goes out more broadly. But that is the plan, that it go out more broadly and be available across the state of Illinois. And so what this is showing here is, again, as we talked about earlier, well, what does it mean? The general public will have access to applications, and those who are maybe not organizationally within the pilot or organizationally a member will still have access. And the big differentiator between the basic and the plus will be that student data that really informs those applications that we were talking about to help advance personalized learning in Illinois. So we're just going to talk about one of the apps because this is something that in my office here with SIU we're working on that you saw earlier on the list of applications. And I'm just going to kind of walk through what that means. And before I do, let me just take one more look at the chat here and see if there's something new I need to talk about before I change the subject. Okay, so I'm thinking the questions are answered. No, what are digital badge technologies? Very good question. I'm going to answer that one. So digital badge technologies will be a way to issue to students, and it could be for teachers or professionals as well. So we're all familiar with maybe getting a certificate or a diploma or some kind of a credential in a paper format. A digital badge allows a broader array of that sort of thing, certificate, or what you're used to in the past is maybe a piece of paper being printed, but it's actually done as a badge online with behind it that credential or whatever that person has accomplished being documented. And so it's a way to better connect with the students and give them credit for things they have accomplished that may be in or outside the classroom. So you may have students that are involved in a variety of activities in the community, They can be getting their digital badges for those as well, and maybe getting recognition for those badges within the classroom. And let's see, one of the core functions is to help with creating personalized education maps. How do we separate the work of ISLE from what the LEs are doing so we don't duplicate efforts? Well, I think it may be, I see that John, Fur, and Dave are kind of talking about that too, that is the idea that we do all want to work together. This isn't intended to be duplicative, and if you are creating the learning maps, we would want to, incorporate them with the learning maps in ISLE, through the ISLE tools. So I think I have caught up with the questions. If I have not, someone just ping me and I'll go back to the questions that I've missed. So I just want to show you some, one of the things that we're working on now. Not that the content tagging and discovery is meant to be the primary application, but it is something that's underway right now. It's something that we're piloting with the Bloomington School District, and it's important because it's going to tie into the other aspects of the ISLE environment, including assessments and learning maps, and it's part of a broader national kind of conversation going on right now as well, if you're familiar with open education resources. But the idea of this is to have an open search beneficial to anyone, tools for educators, STEM exchanges, and workforce partners to tag resources. And I don't want to, that's not the primary emphasis, but it is important. And as we start looking at the tools together, we'll learn more about that. And we want to be able to have these tools that help us align to our learning standards. The Common Core standards are new. Now we have the next generation science standards coming. And as I mentioned earlier, we also need to bring in our career or technical standards as well. So we want to have the tools to align standards to our resources. And right now, except in very closed systems, because remember we're an open system, these things are not widely available. So these are all new ideas that we're acting upon here in Illinois. We're going to upload and tag non-digital resources. I mentioned that earlier, create and share libraries, and then use crowdsourcing. So like you already do in your social media world, we want to be able to comment and rate resources as well. So what I'd like you to know about this is we are coordinating across the nation within Bloom, in particular, formally the Shared Learning Collaborative, working together to make sure that our technologies are working together or that we're using their technologies whenever it is applicable. We're also collaborating with other groups that, if you're not familiar with, I went ahead and listed their websites here, so you could take a look if you want to do a little research, such as OER Commons, Achievement Standards Network, and Achieve, and these are all groups working to not only make open education resources widely available, but with a big focus on quality, on learning standards, alignment, and making sure that educators know how to use these tools and are using good resources. We're also following the progress of the Race to the Top states, along with the State Board of Ed, who are actively a part of those states convening on a regular basis. And this morning, the National Science Digital Library came up, and so I just wanted to mention them. I don't have them on there, but we have even met with them, and we'll continue to correspond and work with them. So we're all moving kind of forward together and not reinventing the wheel or doing things duplicative, but setting up Illinois to take advantage of really good resources, but also giving Illinois an opportunity to bring new world-class resources in that are in fact being developed here in our own state. And so for those of you who are like, what is she talking about? What's an open education resource? These are teaching and learning materials that you can freely use and reuse without charge. And so again, we're used to these very closed systems. We want to open up our system, and we're not saying that there is no room for proprietary type of things, because there will be, and that's perfectly fine. But at the same time, we do want to have opportunities to have high quality, open access to information. In the searching tagging tools that we're looking at in just a moment, we're focusing on using the Creative Commons, and I have a link here if you're not familiar with that. attribution license. It's really just a very simple way to encourage high-quality resource sharing and a way to protect the creator to allow it for non-commercial uses. And so part of the message here, I'm sure, as we were going through that application list, is it will be a learning experience for everyone to understand and learn about these technologies and how they can be used and will be used to help advance personalized learning in Illinois. So this is kind of our big picture of our tagging and discovery applications for collecting and sharing, authoring and uploading, publishing and tagging, searching and narrowing, and evaluating and rating. And I'm going to go ahead and just take a quick look here and see if I have some more questions that I need to answer. So manufacturing, SMLE has developed some programs of studies. That's great. R&D plans to implement a pilot. Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, we would love to work with you. So good to know. So here's just a couple of examples of what I call the use cases, or you can think of them as scenarios. And if you participate with prior meetings, we talked about these, some similar use case examples. If you're new to this, again, think of it as a scenario. So manufacturing programs develop assessments that they need to share with local programs. And I'm going to add to that that they may want to share them with employers that are doing on-the-job training or work-based learning programs. These assessments would be beneficial to other programs in the state or the nation. So the IO Open Education Resource Tools will allow for taking these things that people have created in little pockets that are very excellent tool resources, and they'll be able to upload them and turn them into digital. So they'll take their non-digital resources that may be saved on their computer, or here in my office we call it our Q drive. It's our shared drive, but you have to be at my office to get it. And then they'll be able to share them in collections, or even if you use Google Drive, you could still upload and tag those resources and share them in collections. And here's another use case. A STEM Learning Exchange has developed lesson plans, units, activities, and resources, including videos and text, and I think this came up earlier. We're not creating a course builder here. Course builder is something very different, but we are creating a way that you could take your non-digital learning resources and related items and either as a single item tie them all together, or as multiple resources place them within a collection or library and share them and make them findable by others. And these things, of course, as I said earlier, tying into learning maps as well. A STEM Learning Exchange may have existing web-based resources to make available to their community. Some may be no subscription and just open access. Some may require a subscription, or some may require a login. Even with these scenarios, those tools, it's possible that those tools can integrate with IEL, or that the IEL OER tools can be used to tag those resources and make them available and tie them in to the dashboard and the learning maps. And then closed systems that require a login or subscription could be integrated through the IEL portal. So these are all very plausible, feasible kinds of scenarios that IEL will be addressing. This is the work that's going on now. So I'm just going to show you some screenshots, and if you have any questions about these, you can just let me know. And then I'm going to conclude the webinar by requesting your help. While we're working on whether we're creating applications, and I do want you to know that the applications that NIU and SIU are working on are not things that we're reinventing or building from the ground up. They're building off existing things that have already been started and just need to be, kind of upgraded or enhanced, improved upon. And then other things we may go to, we may use, products or vendors for those things. But this one, this particular sample here, the authoring tool, is something that we're creating in Illinois. Again, reinvent the wheel or be duplicative, but because what Illinois wants to do is be able to integrate resources and do it in a way that we can keep resources in Illinois, some that we may not want to share for various reasons, and others that we do want to keep open and share. And so it's important that we're planning ahead and creating our own repository and making sure that we're providing a way and tools to create author things that fit within the national landscape that's going on now, so things can be integrated, and we call it interoperable. So the authoring tool, what you would do with it, was you take that assessment example that I used earlier that's maybe just on your computer, and maybe with that assessment you would have a rubric, you might have samples, you might have visual aids, and with this you can turn it into a web page that IL will store, and then upload any attachments. So it could even have Word documents, for example, or PDFs, or maybe even a video, references, and you do that very simply through a tool without being a web designer. And when you do that, you're actually creating a web page that IL will store. And then the next thing that you see on the screen here, we call it tagging. You've heard me say that a lot. And so what we mean by that is we have to be able to identify these resources. And to do that, we have to know things like, who are they for? What standards do they teach, for example? What career clusters are they best suited for? And so we'll also be providing tools that you can use to identify those kind of specific attributes of resources, so we can make sure that you can easily find them and put them in collections and share them across the state. The other aspect of it is just searching and narrowing, and one of the things that is in Bloom research, and there's a lot of documentation on this, is now we all have Google and we all use Google, and we know that we can get literally millions of results with Google. So now it becomes almost a problem where you have too much information and we need to find a balance. So we'll also be looking at ways to try to help find that balance, using these new technologies and ideas of kind of narrowing down, much like you do on your favorite shopping sites, only for educational purposes. And these ideas and the kind of tagging that I brought up earlier that's necessary to do this are just now being implemented by states, not just Illinois, but states like New York and in Bloom, other states participating, and there's great interest with all of the Race to the Top states that are moving in this direction as well. So we get a searching and narrowing. Of course, in my sample here, I wanted to point out the career clusters or Illinois pathways. Let me go ahead and go to the next slide here. And so just a couple more screenshots. Search results and details. So you can see here where a search was done for architecture and construction for a student, grades 11, 12 as an example. And then once you do that search, you're going to get a bunch of results, and then you can go see your detail. Now we want to be able to provide tools for you to do the whole full circle that I showed earlier. So you could create if you're a creator, and we're not saying everybody is going to be a creator. It's fine if you're not. But if you are, we're going to have a means for you to get your resources out there and connect them to the IL tools, including the learning maps, and make them widely available as high-quality resources. And then the other part of it would be you could put those in libraries or collections that could be shared. For example, one of the interests the Race to the Top districts have are assessments, and so they may have assessment libraries that they share across Race to the Top districts and with others as well. So we can create libraries, and we could put things in our collection, and we could share our collection of resources where people could like them or dislike them, align them, evaluate them, comment on them, and those sorts of things as well. So I'm going to take a look at the questions coming in again, and we're getting close to closing out the webinar here, and I'm going to conclude it by asking for your help, because we need your feedback. You can't do these applications in a vacuum. We need to have your feedback. Right now we're working very closely with the In Bloom School District, and we need to also work very closely not with every single partner of a learning exchange, but we need some of you to come help us and start looking at these applications and start talking about how we can make them extremely useful to you so they're very helpful and help meet your needs. And so this just kind of brings back full circle to the kind of tools, initial tools that, again, I'm not saying this is the primary tool or the only tool, but it is a tool that is being built now, and we need feedback now before we go too much further, so we need your help for that. So let me see what is going on here in the chat. Let's see here. Give me a moment to just take a look here. Would you say that the STEM LEs are providing more of the detailed content rather than design the tool? Well, you know, we're going to develop the IELTS apps. Again, remember we said that these applications that we're working on are kind of, you know, they're based on, well, what can we put together as a suite of tools that would be very helpful to people based on our budget. And it's not the end of the apps. More apps can definitely come into the picture. We need your help to design the apps to make sure they meet your requirements. Our user needs is so critical in the process. And then if you do have content, if you are resonating with any of those use cases, or you know, you may have many more, then yes, we want to provide a means for you to make that content available. Sure do. Let's see, I'll look into this further. When will you have the tagging information so we can create common tags? Oh, well, you know, we're actually building these tools now, and we're testing them with the Bloomington School District, and anyone who's interested, Michelle, we want to be able to schedule some feedback sessions because now we're tweaking those tools, but we do actually have things built. What I showed you were actual screenshots. And so we want you to get involved. And so again, in closing this, anyone who can help, I'm not saying you have to come here every day, but we're talking like a couple of webinars, maybe 1-hour webinars over the course of a couple of months that we want to get your feedback on, and we'll give you access to the tools as well. Especially with the STEM learning exchanges, we have a really good idea of what the big picture looks like for the K-12 academic education, working very closely with In Bloom and the RTT, but we really need to work with the STEM Learning Exchange to talk about how is it that you envision using the content so we can tag it or make it available in ways that are meaningful to you and your users. All this is focused on K-12. Well, Levon is with the Community College Board. I know Levon. So initially, our focus is just the K-12, but that's just initially because we need to get our applications together, we need to test, we need to work with our school districts, and then we need to expand. And I believe that the IEL team has every intention and desire to do just that, and so we definitely don't want to leave the beyond K-12 out of the picture. So, yep, sorry, that is all. And then Bruce, I'd be happy to bring our working group with someone. Yep, okay, great, that is awesome, Bruce. So as I said, I'm looking for a commitment from the STEM members, and I'm just using the example, that one example again, just because we're at various points with all of these applications. The entire team is working hard on what their focal points are, but we're all working together, we're all communicating, and we're going to need your feedback, you know, on many different perspectives. So I would appreciate any feedback that, you know, we can get from you and keep you in the loop would be fantastic. And with that, well, I would like to give you a final opportunity for any questions. What I can also do is look at my phones here. I was just looking at my laptop to see how many people called, and what I can do here is I can go to, it's called open floor mode. And I'm going to put it on open floor mode.
The floor mode is on. To request the floor, enter star, then pound.
You could hit star pound, and when you do, you'll be able to talk and we'll be able to hear you. So totally up to you. Just I want to give everyone a final chance for any comments or questions. So the phone lines are open. If you call, just hit *#, and I'm just going to check the chat here. The PowerPoint is on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. You can feel free to download it if you would like as well. And stay tuned for more information. Watch for the IO website coming out. You could also, of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Illinois Pathways News. You could also follow our IO Facebook page to stay in touch on just general information. Now let's see. Got some typing going on here. And I guess, let's see, 217. I see 217-724. Did you want to speak? I just unmuted.
Jeannie?
Yeah.
Jeannie, hi, it's John Furr. How are you?
Oh, hey, John. Good,
yeah,
thanks.
I was hoping, can you possibly explain a little bit for the STEM learning exchanges that have existing content that they're going to want to be accessible and hosted, sort of how they should think about looking to try to interface with you and the other members of the IL team to make sure that that content can be appropriately tagged and potentially housed and then made available to their overall community?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, John. Glad you called. Good to hear your voice. So, there's so many potential directions that the learning exchanges are going, and so I don't necessarily have a carte blanche answer here, but we definitely want to have open lines of communication. And you can contact me directly regarding the specific topic of content. And as I had mentioned earlier, the IL team is not just us. We're just a part of a big partnership here. So if it's something that involves Northern Illinois University or even NCSA or Illini Cloud, initially we can make those connections. But what I'm thinking that we need to do right now is just kind of touch bases with each of the STEM learning exchanges and sort of formalize an approach to moving forward, because we are in a develop phase right now. We have to get your feedback now. We don't want to create these things only to find that they don't work for you, or you've already done something, or you have some content. So, John, I'm not sure that I hit exactly the nail that you wanted me to hit on that, because I just want to encourage that kind of open communication, and they could feel free to contact me. And I think as a follow-up to this, what I want to do is contact each of the, the lead contacts for each entity as a follow-up and say, we've talked about these apps, we're building them now, how do we best connect with your group? Do you want to add some more to that, John?
Yeah, no, that's great, Jeannie. I just know that many of the STEM learning exchanges have existing web-based content and are have been asking about how they can have that hosted or made accessible in some way. So I just want to make sure that the conversations are being facilitated with you to try to address that as soon as possible.
Thumbs up. So please do contact me. And again, it may not be something that you'd work directly with me on. It could be that, part of it might be that you have content that's already, as I had shown in that prior use case, maybe it's already within an entire website. So now we need to know how to integrate that. And really that has to be on a system-by-system basis. We have to know, well, what is the system? What are the capabilities? How can we work together? So please do feel free to contact us. We want to communicate, and we want this to be incredibly beneficial, to you, the Race to the Top districts, to Levant's community college districts when we get to that point. And to get to that point, it's so productive if we're all communicating and working together. John, is there anything else I could that you want to say or that I should address? And I'll just take a look here at I don't see anybody else who wants to talk.
No, that's great. Thanks, Jeannie. Nice job.
Okay, thank you very much. So, unless anyone has any other comments or questions, Thanks again. You've got my email address. Please do feel free to email me, and we are looking forward to continuing to work with all of you on the Illinois Shared Learning environment. Thank you very much.